What if the disaster you mourned for 40 years wasn't an accident at all? What if the people you trusted to bring your loved ones home lied? In the fall of 1985, 6 miners were trapped beneath Black Ridge Mountain. Rescue teams dug for weeks, but no survivors were ever found. The mine was sealed, the town moved on. But 40 years later, during a routine geological survey, workers broke into a hidden chamber, untouched since the collapse. And what they found changed everything. Proof of survival, signs of human conflict, and secrets buried deeper than coal itself. Because sometimes, the dead don't rest until the truth is told. Tonight, we'll uncover 4 warning signs, each revealing how the real danger didn't come from the mine, but from above the surface. And the final sign is the one that breaks the town's silence forever. Morning comes slowly to Blackridge. The sun's first light catches on the mountain ridges, turning them gold while the valley below remains wrapped in shadow and mist. This rhythm, light and dark, above and below, defines life here. It always has. By 5:30 a.m., headlights are already cutting through the fog as pickup trucks navigate the winding road toward the mine entrance. The Black Ridge Coal Company is the heartbeat of this town, has been since 1923. The rusted sign at the entrance gate reads, "Powering America's Future since 1923." Below it, smaller letters add, "Safety first, production always." Thomas Carter's thermos is filled with coffee so strong it could strip paint. His lunch pail contains the same thing it always does: 2 ham sandwiches made by his daughter Evelyn, an apple, and a chocolate chip cookie. He's worked the same shift for 18 years. He knows the mountain's moods, its whispers, its warnings. "Something feels off today," he mentions to his shift supervisor, Frank Daniels, as they descend in the elevator cage. The metal box rattles and clanks its way into darkness. "You say that every Thursday, Tom," Frank laughs, not unkindly. His clipboard shows production numbers that need improvement. Corporate's been breathing down his neck all month. "No, I mean it." Thomas taps his ear. "Listen." The descent continues in silence. Then, barely audible beneath the mechanical grinding of the elevator, a low rhythmic hum. It's not the normal sounds of the mine, not the creaking timber supports or settling rock. This is something else. Something mechanical, almost deliberate. By 2:45 p.m., 6 men are working the deepest section of the north shaft. Thomas Carter, Wes Hopper, Miguel Santos, Ray Jenkins, Daryl Whitman, and Bobby Allen. They call themselves the Deep Six. They're 1,200 feet below the surface, following a rich coal seam that curves beneath an underground aquifer. The hum has grown louder. "You hear that, right?" Wes asks, pausing with his pickaxe mid-swing. "Yeah," Miguel wipes sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of coal dust across his forehead. "Been hearing it all day," Ray taps him, his helmet light. "Maybe it's electrical?" "Nah," Thomas shakes his head. "It's coming from behind the north wall, where they closed off Section 12B last month." Thomas remembers when they sealed that section. The foreman had said it was unstable, but the closure happened overnight with no warning. Strange for a mine that usually kept every possible digging face active. He presses his ear against the rock wall. The vibration is stronger here, rhythmic, like the beating of some massive subterranean heart. "I'm calling it in." Thomas reaches for the wall-mounted phone that connects to the surface. He dials the 3-digit code for the control room. Static fills the line. Then a voice, distorted. "Control. This is Carter in North Shaft 9. We're getting some kind of mechanical vibration down here. Sounds like it's coming from the sealed section. Need someone to check?" The line goes dead. Thomas looks at the others. "Phone cut out." "Let's finish the quota and get out of here," Daryl suggests, glancing nervously at the ceiling. "I don't like it when things start acting funny." They return to work, but the hum continues, persistent, like a warning none of them fully understand. At 3:12 p.m., the sensors in the control room start to fluctuate. Oxygen levels drop, then stabilize. Methane spikes briefly. The supervisor on duty, James Collins, makes a note in the log, but doesn't sound an alarm. The readings are unusual but not critical, yet. At 3:17 p.m., the radio operator tries to contact the Deep Six team. There's no response. At 3:19 p.m., the first tremors register on the seismic monitors. At 3:21 p.m., the mountain moves. On the surface, it begins with silence. The phones stop working. The radio channels go quiet. The constant background hum of machinery that every mining town lives with, suddenly gone. Then comes the dust. A great plume of black coal dust erupts from the main shaft like a reversed waterfall, climbing into the sky. For a moment, it hangs there, a dark column connecting earth and sky. The emergency siren wails to life. Martha Santos is the first to arrive at the gates, her hands still wet from the dishes she was washing. Her husband Miguel is down there. She knows the protocols. They've drilled for this. But knowledge doesn't stop her heart from hammering against her ribs. Within minutes, the area outside the mine entrance transforms. Emergency vehicles arrive, their lights painting the coal dust swirling in the air with flashes of red and blue. Wives, children, parents, they gather in clusters, faces tight with the same fearful question. Frank Daniels emerges from the mine office, his face gray as ash. "There's been a collapse in the north section," he announces, voice carrying across the suddenly silent crowd. "We've lost communication with 6 men. Rescue teams are mobilizing now." The words hit like physical blows. 6 men. The Deep Six. Everyone knows exactly who's trapped. Evelyn Carter, just 18, stands frozen at the edge of the crowd. Her father had kissed her goodbye that morning, teased her about using too much jam on his sandwiches. Now he's somewhere beneath her feet, buried under who knows how much rock. The first rescue team enters the mine at 4:07 p.m. They carry oxygen tanks, medical supplies, communication equipment. Their faces betray nothing, but their hurried movements tell a different story. Time is the enemy now. Above ground, the waiting begins. In the days that follow, Blackridge becomes a town divided between surface and depths. Above ground, life continues in suspended animation. Schools close, businesses operate on skeleton crews. The church stays open day and night for prayer vigils. Below, an increasingly desperate search unfolds in the dark. The rescue teams encounter one obstacle after another. Tunnel collapses block the most direct routes. Unstable ceilings force them to move with agonizing caution. Gas pockets require constant ventilation. On the 3rd day, they find a hard hat. It belongs to Wes Hopper. It's crushed nearly flat. On the 5th day, they recover a lunch pail. Thomas Carter's. Inside, 2 untouched sandwiches and a note from Evelyn. "Love you, Dad. Be safe today." On the 7th day, they detect faint sounds, rhythmic tapping that might be coming from beyond a wall of fallen rock. 3 taps, pause. 3 taps, pause. The universal distress signal of miners. Hope surges. The rescue effort redoubles. Engineers calculate the fastest, safest way through the debris. But on the 8th day, the tapping stops. And on the 10th day, James Morgan, the Blackridge Coal Company's East Coast Operations Director, arrives from Pittsburgh. He tours the rescue site, consults with engineers, reviews the logs, and makes his announcement. "Based on our calculations of oxygen depletion rates, structural stability assessments, and the advice of our safety experts, we have determined that no survivable conditions exist beyond the collapse points. This is no longer a rescue operation. It's a recovery." The words fall like stones. Martha Santos screams, a raw sound that seems to come from somewhere deeper than her throat. Ray Jenkins' wife collapses, caught by her teenage son before she hits the ground. Bobby Allen's mother, who has sat silently by the gates for 10 days straight, simply closes her eyes. Evelyn Carter stands perfectly still, her face blank. "But we heard tapping," she says, her voice small. "They were alive." James Morgan adjusts his tie. Echo effects from the rescue equipment. Common misperception in these situations. "So you're just giving up?" Evelyn's voice rises. "You're leaving them down there?" "Miss Carter," Morgan says, his tone professionally sympathetic, "I understand your distress, but continuing this operation poses unacceptable risks to our rescue personnel. The mine has become too unstable. We've lost 6 good men, I won't lose more. 2 days later, the search is officially terminated. The north shaft is declared unsalvageable, a total loss. Plans begin to permanently seal the collapsed sections. But in Blackridge, whispers begin about how quickly the company made its decision, about the geological report that one rescuer claims showed survivable pockets beyond the collapse, about the strange hum that multiple miners reported hearing before the disaster, a sound like nothing natural, about the way the company men gathered up all the logbooks, all the inspection records, all the maintenance reports. A town built on coal learns to keep certain things buried. Questions without answers. Suspicions without proof. Grief without resolution. The widows receive their compensation checks. The children of the miners get college scholarship funds. The company builds a memorial park with 6 stone markers, one for each man lost. But there are no bodies to bury, no remains to lay to rest. Just empty caskets lowered into the ground while the real graves remain sealed beneath millions of tons of rock. Evelyn Carter doesn't attend her father's funeral. Instead, she sits by the sealed mine entrance, listening, waiting for a sound no one else believes in anymore. 40 years later, that patience will finally be rewarded. The community center on Elm Street has seen better days. Paint peels from the ceiling in long curls. The fluorescent lights buzz and flicker. But today, every folding chair is filled. Men in work clothes, faces lined with coal dust that never quite washes away, lean forward to hear what their union representative has to say. Howard Lawson has been the voice of the United Mine Workers in Blackridge for 15 years. He's negotiated 3 contracts, led 1 strike, and earned the respect of both the miners and management. But today, his usual confidence is missing. "I won't sugarcoat this, brothers," he says, his voice echoing in the crowded room. "The company's proposal is the worst I've seen. 10% pay cut across the board, reduced health benefits. And, this is the real kicker, they want to eliminate the 3rd safety inspector position." Murmurs ripple through the crowd. Thomas Carter, sitting in the 3rd row, exchanges a glance with Miguel Santos beside him. "That leaves just 2 inspectors for the whole operation," Howard continues. "And they'll be reporting directly to production management instead of safety division." "They can't do that," Wes Hopper calls out. "That's against federal regulations." Howard shakes his head. "They've found a loophole. If they classify certain tunnels as temporarily inactive, they don't need the same level of inspection." "Temporarily inactive?" Ray Jenkins scoffs. "We were working the East Seam last week." "On paper, you weren't," Howard replies. "Look, I filed a complaint with the Department of Labor, but these things take time. Meanwhile, the company's claiming financial hardship. They're threatening to close the whole operation if we don't agree to the cuts. The implications hang heavy in the air. In Blackridge, the mine is everything. Without it, the town dies." "What about those new investors?" Thomas asks. "I thought some big Pittsburgh outfit bought controlling interest last quarter." Howard hesitates. "Blackridge Holdings, LLC. Very little public information about them, but they're pushing hard for increased output. So they buy in, cut our pay, cut safety, and expect us to dig faster?" Thomas's voice rises. "That sound right to anyone?" The meeting dissolves into angry debate. In the end, they vote to reject the company's proposal and authorize Howard to continue negotiations. But everyone knows their position is weak. Coal prices are down. Mines are closing across West Virginia. They need these jobs. As the men file out, Thomas lingers behind. "Howard, something doesn't add up. This new ownership group, what do we really know about them?" Howard glances around, then lowers his voice. "Not much, but I've got a friend at the State Regulatory Commission. He says they've been buying up troubled mines across 3 states. Always the same pattern. Acquire, cut costs, push production, then flip the property within 18 months. So they're not coal people, they're money people." Howard nods. "Exactly. They don't see miners. They see numbers on a spreadsheet." 2 weeks later, Howard Lawson's truck is found abandoned at Sawyer's Creek, 5 miles outside of town. His wallet, keys, and cell phone are on the passenger seat. There's no sign of a struggle, no evidence of foul play. Just a man who apparently walked into the woods and never returned. The search lasts 3 days before the sheriff calls it off. Probably headed for Pittsburgh, he tells the miners who demand answers. Union business, most likely. He'll turn up. But Howard never does. The union sends a replacement, a young man named Patrick Kelly who talks about compromise and mutual benefits and difficult market realities. Within a month, he's negotiated the very deal Howard had opposed. Lower wages, reduced benefits, fewer safety inspectors. Thomas Carter refuses to sign the agreement. It's suicide, he argues in the break room. You cut corners on safety in a mine, people die. Simple as that. Not much choice, Miguel says quietly. My oldest starts college next year. I need this job. We all need the jobs, Thomas acknowledges, but we need to come home alive too. In the weeks that follow, subtle changes appear throughout the mine. Maintenance schedules stretch longer between inspections. Support timber deliveries arrive late, forcing crews to space them further apart than regulations specify. Ventilation fans that once ran continuously are now cycled to save electricity. Thomas documents every violation. He carries a small notebook in his pocket, recording dates, times, conditions. Twice a week, he sends letters to the Mine Safety and Health Administration, detailing his concerns. The responses, when they come at all, are formulaic. Thank you for your report. Your concerns have been noted. An inspector will follow up at the next scheduled visit. But the inspectors who visit seem more interested in the production office than the mining tunnels. They arrive in polished trucks, meet behind closed doors with management, and leave without speaking to any actual miners. In late September, Thomas is called to the foreman's office. Frank Daniels looks uncomfortable as Thomas takes a seat. Tom, you're creating problems, Frank begins, not meeting his eyes. These letters to MSHA, these complaints, it's putting us all in a difficult position. Safety's not negotiable, Frank. You know that. Frank sighs. The higher-ups are noticing. They're asking questions about you. Good. Let them ask. I've got answers. It's not that simple. Frank slides a piece of paper across the desk. This came down today. You're being reassigned to the North Shaft. Thomas picks up the transfer order. The North Shaft is the deepest, most difficult section of the mine. It's where they send troublemakers. Is this supposed to scare me? It's supposed to give you perspective. You keep this up. Next paper might be termination. How's Evelyn going to go to college if you're unemployed? Thomas feels his face flush with anger. Don't you bring my daughter into this. Frank holds up his hands. I'm just saying, think about what matters. We all have to make compromises. Thomas stands, tucking the transfer paper into his pocket alongside his notebook. Some compromises cost too much. As he turns to leave, Frank calls after him. And Tom? They want you to bring your crew. All of them. The North Shaft assignment proves even worse than Thomas expected. The support structures show signs of stress. Water seeps through in places where it shouldn't. The methane detectors are older models, less sensitive. And then there's the sealed section, Tunnel 12B. According to the mine plans, it was closed due to low-quality coal deposits not worth extracting. But Thomas has been studying the geological surveys. The seam in 12B is identical to the one they're currently mining. There's no logical reason to have abandoned it. Something stinks, he tells Wes Hopper as they eat lunch in a hollowed-out alcove. And it's not just the sandwiches. Wes glances nervously over his shoulder. Keep your voice down. Foreman's got ears everywhere these days. I'm done being quiet. Thomas pulls out his notebook, flips to a diagram he's drawn. Look at this. I've mapped the support beam replacements for the last 3 months. See a pattern? Wes studies the drawing. They're all clustered in the central shaft. Exactly. Meanwhile, the north and east tunnels are running on original timbers from 2 years ago. They're prioritizing the visible sections, the ones an inspector might actually see. So what are you going to do? Thomas hesitates. He's asked himself this question every night for weeks. I've got a contact at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Investigative reporter. I'm sending him everything after next week's shift. Wes's eyes widen. Jesus, Tom. They'll fire you for sure. Probably. But if these conditions don't change, someone's going to die down here. Thomas closes his notebook. I'm meeting him Sunday morning. The stuff I've documented, it's enough to trigger a federal investigation. 3 days later, on October 17, 1985, the North Shaft collapsed. All 6 men on Thomas Carter's crew were trapped. The notebooks were never recovered. And exactly 1 month after the disaster, Blackridge Holdings, LLC filed an insurance claim for $27 million in losses. The settlement came through in record time. Eleanor Phillips has worked in the records department of the Blackridge Coal Company's corporate headquarters for 23 years. She knows every file, every document, every map in the system. Her small office on the 7th floor is a model of organizational precision. So when James Morgan, East Coast Operations Director, requests all materials related to the Blackridge mine disaster for an insurance review, she notices immediately that something is wrong. The Section 12B extension map is missing, she tells him, peering over her reading glasses. It should be in the North Shaft documentation folder. Morgan's expression doesn't change. Check again. It must be misfiled. I've checked 3 times, Mr. Morgan. That map was here when I cataloged the emergency response documents in November. Now it's gone. Morgan drums his fingers on her desk. It's not important. We have the main shaft diagrams. But Section 12B connects to where the collapse occurred. The investigators will need to see the complete layout. The investigation is closed, Eleanor. His voice hardens. The insurance review is a formality. If the map's missing, make a note in the file and move on. After he leaves, Eleanor sits at her desk, troubled. In 23 years, she's never lost a document. And the Section 12B map wasn't just any document. It showed the emergency escape routes and ventilation channels for the deepest part of the mine. That evening, she stays late, searching through every drawer, every folder. The map is nowhere to be found. But in her search, she discovers something else. A memo dated October 5, 1985, 12 days before the collapse, authorizing structural modifications to Tunnel 12B. The memo is signed by James Morgan himself. Eleanor makes a photocopy of the memo and slips it into her purse. The next morning, she calls in sick, something she hasn't done in over a decade. Instead of going to work, she drives to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette building downtown. She's read Michael Bennett's investigative pieces on coal industry safety violations. If anyone will understand the significance of what she's found, it's him. But Michael Bennett isn't at his desk. According to the receptionist, he's taken a leave of absence, something about a family emergency. Eleanor leaves her number, asking him to call her when he returns. That afternoon, her home phone rings. The caller doesn't identify himself, but the voice is unmistakable. You visited the Post-Gazette today, Eleanor. James Morgan's tone is conversational, almost friendly. That's concerning. Eleanor feels her blood run cold. How did you? You've been a valuable employee for many years, he continues, as if she hadn't spoken. Your pension is nearly vested. It would be unfortunate if anything interfered with that. Are you threatening me? I'm reminding you of your confidentiality agreement. Company documents are company property. Sharing them with outsiders constitutes theft. Eleanor thinks of the memo in her purse, of the missing map, of 6 men buried under millions of tons of rock. What happened in Section 12B? She asks, her voice barely above a whisper. The line goes silent for so long she thinks he's hung up. Then, nothing that concerns records department staff. Enjoy your sick day, Eleanor. I expect you back at your desk tomorrow morning. The line goes dead. Eleanor doesn't sleep that night. She keeps thinking about the memo, the map, the timing of it all. In the morning, she makes a decision. She will go to work, act normal, and quietly continue gathering evidence. There must be other documents that could explain what happened. But when she arrives at her office, her key no longer works. Security escorts her to Human Resources, where she's informed that her position has been eliminated as part of a post-incident reorganization. Her personal items have already been packed into a cardboard box. Her files have been reassigned. The severance package is generous, 3 months' salary plus extended health benefits. All they need is her signature on a non-disclosure agreement. Standard procedure, the HR manager assures her, just confirms that you won't discuss proprietary company information. Eleanor reads the document carefully. It specifically prohibits any communication about mine operations, safety protocols, structural modifications, or emergency response procedures related to the Black Ridge mine. And if I don't sign, then unfortunately we can't process your severance package. The HR manager's smile doesn't reach her eyes. And of course, future employment references might become complicated. Eleanor thinks about her mortgage, her sister's medical bills that she helps with, the job market for 57-year-old records clerks in Pittsburgh. She signs. The memo about Section 12B stays hidden in a cookbook in her kitchen cabinet, never shown to anyone. Michael Bennett never returns her call. 3 months later, she reads in the newspaper that he's taken a reporting job in California. And the map of Section 12B, the one showing the secondary ventilation shaft that might have offered an escape route to 6 trapped miners, remains missing to this day. Blackridge isn't a ghost town, but it's getting there. The mine closed for good in 1991, unable to recover from the disaster and changing energy markets. The population has dwindled from 8,000 to barely 2,000. Storefronts on Main Street stand empty, windows dusty and dark. But today, there's activity at the old mine site for the first time in decades. Trucks with the logo of Eastern Resource Development line the gravel road leading to the sealed entrance. Men in hard hats consult tablets and blueprints. Surveying equipment blinks in the morning sun. In a small house on Maple Street, Evelyn Carter's phone rings. Ms. Carter, this is Dr. Rena Alvarado with Eastern Resource Development. I understand you're the town historian? Evelyn smiles slightly at the title. Her historical society consists of boxes of documents in her spare bedroom and a blog with maybe 50 regular readers. But she spent 40 years collecting every scrap of information about the mine disaster that took her father. That's right, she answers. What can I do for you? I'm leading a geological survey team at the old Black Ridge mine. We're assessing the site for potential brownfield redevelopment. I'd love to get some historical context from you. Mine layouts, operational history, that sort of thing. Evelyn's hand tightens on the phone. What kind of redevelopment? Nothing's decided yet. Could be renewable energy installation, could be commercial. We're just doing preliminary assessments. The north shaft has been sealed since '85. Nothing good waiting for you there. Dr. Alvarado pauses. Actually, that's part of what I wanted to discuss. Our initial scans are showing some anomalies in the sealed sections. I thought someone with your knowledge might help us interpret what we're seeing. Evelyn has waited 40 years for someone to take a second look at the mine. She's not about to let this opportunity pass. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Dr. Rena Alvarado is younger than Evelyn expected. Mid-40s maybe, with intelligent eyes and an air of methodical precision. She leads Evelyn to a trailer set up as a command center, walls covered with geological surveys, structural analysis printouts, and historical mine maps. We're conducting a comprehensive stability assessment, Dr. Alvarado explains. Before any redevelopment can happen, we need to understand what's below the surface. Old mines can shift, collapse, create sinkholes decades later. I'm familiar with the risks, Evelyn says dryly. So what anomalies are you finding? Dr. Alvarado pulls up an image on her computer. It's a ground-penetrating radar scan, showing layers of earth and rock in different colors. This is the sealed north shaft area. According to the records, it should be completely collapsed. But look here. She points to a hollow space on the scan, a void where there should be solid debris. That's impossible. Evelyn leans closer. The company said the whole section was crushed in the collapse. Well, the radar says otherwise. There's a chamber down there, roughly 30 feet long and 15 feet wide. And it's not a natural formation. The walls are too regular. Evelyn's heart beats faster. You need to get down there. That's the plan. We're setting up a remote access shaft now. Small diameter, just enough for cameras and sampling equipment. Should be ready by tomorrow. I want to be here when you go in. Dr. Alvarado studies her face. You had someone in the collapse. My father, Thomas Carter. Understanding dawns in the geologist's eyes. I've read about the disaster. 6 men lost, right? Not lost, Evelyn corrects. Abandoned. The next day, a small crowd gathers to watch the drilling operation. Word has spread quickly through what remains of Blackridge. For many, the mine disaster is ancient history. For others, the widows, the children, the former miners, it's a wound that never healed. The drilling rig bores through layers of rock and compacted earth, following a carefully plotted path to avoid destabilizing the surrounding tunnels. Dr. Alvarado monitors the sensors, occasionally adjusting parameters based on what they encounter. By mid-afternoon, they've reached their target depth. A specialized camera is lowered through the narrow shaft, its LED lights illuminating the darkness below. Inside the trailer, Evelyn watches the video feed with Dr. Alvarado and her team. At first, there's nothing but swirling dust and debris disturbed by the drilling. Then, as the dust settles, shapes begin to emerge. "Oh my God," Dr. Alvarado whispers. The chamber is man-made, its walls reinforced with mining timber. But it's not part of the original mine design. It's cruder, more hastily constructed, a survival space created after the collapse. The camera pans across the floor, revealing rusted tools, empty water containers, and the remains of what appears to be a makeshift filtration system fashioned from clothing and metal scraps. "They survived the initial collapse," Evelyn's voice breaks. "They built this." Dr. Alvarado squeezes her shoulder but says nothing, her eyes fixed on the screen as the camera continues its survey. In one corner, a pile of debris contains what was once paper, now decayed into an unrecognizable mass. Nearby, scratches on the rock wall appear to be tallies, counting days perhaps. Then the camera finds something that stops everyone's breath. 6 mining helmets arranged in a row. Each one has a name written on it in coal dust. Carter, Hopper, Santos, Jenkins, Whitman, Allen. But it's the 7th object that causes Dr. Alvarado to zoom the camera in for a closer look. Another helmet, separated from the others, lying on its side. This one has no name. Instead, etched deeply into its surface are 2 words: still breathing. "Get me down there," Evelyn says, her voice steel. "Now." Dr. Alvarado shakes her head. "We need to expand the access shaft first. Make sure it's stable. We're looking at tomorrow at the earliest." 40 years. Evelyn's eyes never leave the screen. "I've waited 40 years. I can wait one more day." The expanded access shaft is completed by noon the next day. It's just wide enough for one person to be lowered down in a harness. Despite Dr. Alvarado's concerns about safety, Evelyn insists on being among the first to enter. "I'm not a geologist," Dr. Alvarado argues. "I shouldn't even be going down myself. This is really a job for a recovery team." "If you're going, I'm going," Evelyn is immovable. "That's my father's helmet down there." In the end, they descend together. Dr. Alvarado, Evelyn, and a structural engineer named Marcus Kim, who will assess the chamber's stability. They wear protective suits, respirators, and carry powerful lights. The descent is slow and cramped, the narrow shaft barely accommodating their bodies. When they finally emerge into the chamber, the reality is both better and worse than the camera revealed. Better because the space is larger than it appeared on video, almost 40 feet long, with a ceiling just high enough to stand. Worse because the evidence of suffering is everywhere. The air is stale but breathable. Decades of isolation have preserved the scene in a way that feels almost sacred. Dust covers everything, but beneath it, the story of 6 men's desperate fight for survival is written in every artifact. Dr. Alvarado moves methodically around the perimeter, documenting everything with a handheld scanner. Marcus checks the structural supports, murmuring into a recorder about stress points and load-bearing capacity. Evelyn stands in the center, turning slowly, trying to absorb what she's seeing. This is where her father spent his final days. This space, this tomb they built for themselves when the company abandoned them. She moves to the row of helmets kneeling before them. Each one tells a story. Wes Hopper's is dented on one side. Ray Jenkins has a family photo taped to the inside rim, now faded almost to invisibility. Her father's is the cleanest, the name written in the steadiest hand. They had air, Dr. Alvarado says, examining the makeshift ventilation system. They tapped into a natural fissure that connected to the surface. Not much, but enough to survive for a while. How long? Evelyn asks, her voice hollow. Based on the tallies on the wall, at least 26 days after the collapse. 26 days. While the company claimed no one could have survived, while the rescue was called off after only 10. Evelyn moves to the 7th helmet, the one with the message. Up close, she can see that the words weren't just scratched into the surface. They were carved with methodical precision, the letters deep and deliberate. This wasn't a hasty message. It was a testimony. Still breathing. Whose helmet is this? She asks. It's not one of the 6. Marcus joins them, shining his light on the object. Different model, newer. See the reinforced brim? That's a supervisor's helmet. From the rescue team? Dr. Alvarado suggests. Evelyn turns the helmet over. Inside, barely visible through years of dust, is a name tag. F. Daniels. Frank Daniels, Evelyn whispers. He was my father's shift supervisor. Why would his helmet be down here? Marcus asks. The records say no rescue personnel reached this far. Evelyn's mind races, connecting dots that have eluded her for 40 years. Because this wasn't a rescue. Frank came down here after the collapse. He found them alive. But the official report, Dr. Alvarado begins, was a lie. Evelyn's voice hardens. Frank found them, and instead of reporting it, he left them here, or worse, trapped them here deliberately. She moves to what had appeared to be a collapse at the far end of the chamber, but looking closer, she sees it's not random debris. The rocks and timber are stacked in a deliberate pattern. This wasn't a natural cave-in. It was a wall, built from the outside. Oh my God, Dr. Alvarado's light joins hers. Someone sealed them in. Not someone, Evelyn says. The company. She runs her hand along the rough stone surface of the barrier. On the other side of this wall would have been the rest of the mine, and a path to the surface. But why? Marcus asks. Why leave them to die if they'd already found them? Evelyn doesn't answer immediately. Instead, she moves to the decayed papers in the corner. Most are too deteriorated to read, but a few fragments remain legible. She picks up a piece, careful not to crumble it further. It's my father's handwriting, she says, voice barely audible. Listen to this. Structural modifications to 12B without proper support. Criminal negligence. Morgan authorized drilling through the aquifer barrier despite... She picks up another fragment. Deliberate falsification of safety reports. Will testify to federal... The pieces fall into place with sickening clarity. Her father had been documenting safety violations. He was planning to become a whistleblower. The company couldn't let that happen. They murdered them, Evelyn says, the words hanging in the stale air. They found them alive and sealed them in here to die because my father was going to expose them. Dr. Alvarado looks stricken. We need to call the authorities. This is evidence of criminal activity. After 40 years? Marcus shakes his head. The statute of limitations. There is no statute of limitations on murder, Evelyn cuts him off. And we have proof right here. She points to the helmet with its accusation carved in metal. Still breathing. A message not just of survival, but of deliberate abandonment. Her father's final testimony. There's something else you should see, Dr. Alvarado calls from near the sealed exit. Her light illuminates a metal box partially buried in debris. Looks like a tool case. Together, they clear away the fragments of rock and timber. The case is heavy, made of industrial steel with a simple latch. Inside, protected from the elements, they find a notebook. The pages are yellowed, but intact. Thomas, Carter's journal. Evelyn's hands tremble as she opens it. The first entries detail normal shift activities, safety concerns, conversations with crew members. But then, dated October 18th, the day after the collapse. Explosion-sealed main tunnel. Air pocket in Section 12B extension keeping us alive. Santos injured but stable. Using Daryl's insulin pump to filter water from seep. Air coming through fissure in north wall. Should last if we stay calm. October 20th. Heard drilling above. Tapped response code. They must know we're here. October 23rd. Drilling stopped yesterday. Why would they stop? Wes thinks they're coming from another direction. October 25th. Found old 12B ventilation shaft. Partially collapsed but might be passable. Starting to dig tomorrow. The entries continue, documenting their survival efforts, their hopes, their increasing desperation as days pass without rescue. Then, dated November 12th, 26 days after the collapse. Someone on the other side heard voices, tools. They found us, thank God. The next entry, same day, written in a shakier hand. It's Frank. He came through the ventilation shaft. Says rescue called off weeks ago. Everyone thinks we're dead. He seems nervous, won't look me in the eye. Says he'll go back, get help secretly. Left water and some food. Taking my notes about the safety violations as proof. The final entry, November 14th. Frank never came back. Instead, we heard construction on the other side of the vent shaft. They're sealing us in. Why? My notes. It has to be. They can't let us out because of what I know. Santos's chest infection worse. Alan delirious from dehydration. Air getting thinner. I've scratched the truth on Frank's helmet in case someone someday finds us. Evelyn, if by some miracle you ever read this, I love you. Keep fighting for the truth. The journal falls silent after that. 6 men, abandoned by their company, sealed alive in a tomb of corporate greed, left to die in darkness. Evelyn closes the book, tears streaming down her face. For 40 years, she's lived with questions, with uncertainty, with the gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right about her father's death. Now she knows. We're taking all of this to the surface, she says, her voice steadying with resolve. Every notebook, every artifact, every piece of evidence, it's time Blackridge heard the truth. The truth, once buried, will always find a way back to light. But for some, that truth comes far too late. The town hall hasn't been this full in decades. People stand along the walls, crowd the doorways, spill out onto the steps outside. They've come to hear about the discovery that has shattered 40 years of silence. At the front of the room, a table holds the evidence recovered from the sealed chamber. 6 helmets in a row, the 7th with its damning message, Thomas Carter's journal, tools the trapped miners used in their desperate bid for survival, and enlarged photographs of the man-made wall that sealed their fate. Dr. Rena Alvarado presents the scientific findings first. Her voice is clinical, factual, devoid of the emotion that churns beneath the surface. Based on our analysis of air pocket sustainability, the ventilation fissure dimensions, and the documented survival timeline, we can conclusively state that all 6 miners survived the initial collapse. Furthermore, they remained alive for at least 26 days afterward. She clicks to the next slide, showing a structural diagram of the mine. The ventilation shaft they discovered would have provided a viable escape route. Our models indicate it remained structurally sound until it was deliberately sealed from the outside on or around November 12, 1985. The word deliberately sends a ripple through the crowd. Next is Marcus Kim, the structural engineer. We've examined the barrier that sealed the ventilation shaft. It wasn't a natural collapse. The materials were brought in and assembled in a specific pattern designed to create an impenetrable wall. This required equipment, planning, and multiple personnel to execute. He shows close-up images of the barrier. You can see tool marks here and here. Industrial-grade cement was used to reinforce the structure. This was a calculated engineering decision, not an emergency response to unstable conditions. When Evelyn Carter finally steps to the podium, the room falls completely silent. She's known to everyone in Blackridge, the woman who never stopped asking questions, who never accepted the official story, who turned down the settlement money that would have required her silence. For 40 years, she begins, we've lived with the story that my father and 5 other men died instantly in a tragic accident. We've been told that nature took them, that nothing could have been done, that the company did everything possible to save them. She picks up her father's journal. This tells a different story. A story of men who survived against all odds, who believed in rescue until the very end, who instead were entombed alive because they knew too much. Evelyn reads excerpts from the journal, her voice steady despite the devastating words. When she finishes, there's not a dry eye in the room. My father was going to expose dangerous safety violations that the company had deliberately covered up. violations that threatened the entire mine and everyone who worked there. Instead of fixing the problems, they silenced the messenger. And when those same conditions caused the collapse, they couldn't risk the truth coming out. So they buried it, along with 6 living men. A voice calls from the back of the room. Who? Who gave the order? James Morgan, Evelyn answers without hesitation. East Coast Operations Director for Blackridge Coal, and Frank Daniels, my father's shift supervisor, who carried out those orders. Morgan's been dead 10 years, someone else calls out. And Daniels moved to Florida right after the mine closed. Convenient, isn't it? Yes, Evelyn agrees. Convenient for them. But this was never about individual blame. This was systemic. This was a culture of silence that extended from the corporate offices to our own streets. She looks around the room, meeting the eyes of former miners, widows, children who grew up without fathers. How many of you suspected something wasn't right? How many heard rumors, noticed discrepancies, felt that the official story didn't add up? And how many stayed quiet because speaking up might cost you your job, your home, your place in this community? The silence that follows is damning. I don't blame you, Evelyn continues softly. That's how the system works. It makes complicity the path of least resistance. It turns ordinary people into accomplices through their silence. Martha Santos stands up from her seat in the front row. She's in her 70s now, her hair white, but her spine still straight. Miguel knew something was wrong, she says, her voice carrying clearly. The week before the collapse, he told me they were cutting corners on support beams in the north section. He reported it, but nothing happened. After they told me he died, a company man came to our house with the settlement papers. He said if I ever repeated Miguel's claims, they'd contest the payment. I had 3 children to feed. What choice did I have? Others begin to speak up. A former mine electrician describes being ordered to falsify safety inspection records. A retired office clerk recalls shredding documents after the disaster. A maintenance worker remembers delivering cement to the mine entrance weeks after the rescue had officially ended. One by one, the fragments of truth emerge, forming a pattern that stretches back decades. Jack Merrill, once part of the rescue team, is the last to speak. He's stooped with age, leaning heavily on a cane, his voice barely audible. I helped seal that shaft, he confesses, tears streaming down his weathered face. They told us it was to prevent methane buildup, said it was standard procedure after a failed rescue. I believed them, or maybe I just wanted to believe them. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The way they rushed us, the way they made us work at night, the way they collected all our equipment afterward and told us never to discuss it. He looks directly at Evelyn. I've lived with this for 40 years. Every night I hear them tapping from below. I'm sorry. God help me. I'm so sorry. The room falls silent again. The weight of collective guilt, of shared responsibility, hangs in the air. Dr. Alvarado clears her throat. What happens now is up to this community. We've notified state authorities and federal mining regulators. There will be investigations, possibly criminal charges against any living participants, but no legal process can undo what happened. Evelyn steps forward again. What we can do is tell the truth, finally, completely. We can honor these men by breaking the silence that killed them. She picks up her father's helmet, runs her fingers over his name. Thomas Carter, Wes Hopper, Miguel Santos, Ray Jenkins, Darrell Whitman, Bobby Allen. They deserved better from their company. They deserved better from their town. They deserved to come home. Martha Santos joins her at the front, then Jack Merrill, then others, forming a circle around the table of evidence, a community finally confronting its buried past. In the weeks that follow, the story of the Blackridge miners spreads beyond the town's borders. National news crews arrive. Documentary filmmakers interview survivors. Investigators from the Justice Department comb through decades-old corporate records. 3 former Blackridge Coal Company executives are indicted on charges of involuntary manslaughter, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Frank Daniels, located in a nursing home in Sarasota, faces additional charges for his direct role in sealing the miners inside the chamber. The town itself begins a painful process of reconciliation. Streets are renamed to honor the 6 men. A proper memorial is built where the hasty stone markers once stood. The mine site is declared a historical landmark protected from future development. But the most profound change happens in the quiet conversations between neighbors, in the shared acknowledgement of a collective failure, in the promise to never again let silence become complicity. The morning mist still gathers over the rusting machinery, just as it did 40 years ago. But today, there's a crowd at the mine entrance, not in panic or grief, but in remembrance and resolution. 6 caskets are lined up on a platform draped in black. Inside each are the recovered helmets, tools, and personal effects of the lost miners. After 4 decades, they're finally coming home. Evelyn Carter stands with the other families, older now, marked by time and grief, but no longer haunted by uncertainty. The truth has set them free, even as it confirmed their worst fears. "We gather today not only to mourn," the minister begins, "but to witness, to acknowledge what happened here, to speak aloud what was kept silent, to honor men who died because they dared to stand for safety and truth." As the service continues, Evelyn notices something strange in the air, a low rhythmic sound that seems to come from the sealed mine entrance. She glances at Martha Santos, who nods slightly. She hears it too, the same mysterious hum that the miners reported before the collapse. The sound that was dismissed, ignored, explained away. The warning no one heeded. It could be the wind in the old structures. It could be settling rock deep below. It could be imagination fed by emotional memory. Or it could be something else. A reminder that beneath every layer of silence, truth continues to pulse, to reverberate, to insist on being heard. Evelyn places her hand on her father's casket. "I heard you, Dad," she whispers. "We all hear you. Now." The sound continues, a heartbeat beneath the mountain, as 6 men finally come home to rest. 4 warning signs, each one ignored. The unnatural hum that preceded disaster. The sudden budget cuts and vanishing safety personnel. The missing map that might have led to rescue. And the final damning message scratched into metal. Still breathing. The real tragedy of Black Ridge wasn't just that 6 men died in darkness. It's that their deaths were preventable, predictable, the culmination of a system designed to value profit over people, silence over safety. The pattern exists beyond one small mining town. It repeats wherever power insists on secrecy, wherever questions are met with threats, wherever whistleblowers are silenced instead of heeded. Every disaster leaves echoes, warnings that ripple backward through time, visible only if we're willing to listen, to notice, to speak. Sometimes the deepest danger isn't what lies beneath the earth. It's what we bury within ourselves. What would you have done if your loved ones were trapped and no one believed your suspicions? And remember, the deeper you dig, the darker the truth becomes.